Okay, so welcome to Eat, Move, Think, the show about optimal wellness brought to you by Medcan.
Wow. Do it again.
Oh, I was practicing. Okay, ready?
Welcome to Eat, Move, Think, the show about optimal wellness brought to you by Medcan.
Yeah, this is extremely good. Thank you. Really excited about this episode.
You are?
Yeah, because in one respect, this is why we're doing this podcast, to provide people with actionable insights that help them achieve optimal wellness.
Yeah.
And here we're doing it for food. The registered dietitians are taking all the science out there about the questions that they get asked the most and distilling it into basically an answer that is one single sentence. So, how much coffee should I drink?
What foods should I just never be eating at all?
Is diet soda bad for you? I think a lot of people answer, especially the people who drink several Diet Cokes, wonder, is diet soda bad for you?
Which supplements do I need to take? Should I even be taking supplements?
How many calories should I eat every day?
Yeah, and how many eggs can I eat every day and every week?
These are questions I wonder several times a week.
Yeah.
And I am excited to get this distilled. I'm Chris.
I'm Jazz.
We're the producers of Eat, Move, Think. And today on the show, we have
Medcan's Director of Food and Nutrition and the Chair of the Dietitians of Canada, Leslie Beck. And she'll be talking to
Medcan dietitians Olivia Cupido and Terence Boateng.
They do dozens of nutrition consultations every single week, and they get asked these questions pretty much on a daily basis. So here are their answers.
Get out your pens and pencils.
Yep.
Here's Leslie Beck.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Eat, Move, Think. I'm Leslie Beck, Director of Food and Nutrition at Medcan, and today I'm your Eat host. I'm here today with two of my fellow Medcan dietitians, Olivia Cupido and Terence Boateng. Hi, Olivia. Hi, Terence. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and take part of the podcast today.
So you're both here today to help me answer the nutrition questions that we get asked the most. And I am sure of these 6 questions we're going to cover today, we probably are asked at least one of them every single day. So let's start off with the first one. Which food should I never eat? And Olivia, I want to throw this to you and hear what you tell clients when you get that question.
I really strongly believe that there is not necessarily one food that we shouldn't eat. And I hope that people leaving my office are open to the fact that, okay, maybe that's not what dietitians do, and maybe I shouldn't be so scared to see them. So I kind of cheat the question sometimes, and I'll just say, don't ever eat something you're allergic to, or don't ever eat something that you really dislike. But that is my answer, non-answer, if you will.
Okay, I like that, cheating the question.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And one thing I found, at least for me personally, a few years back, I was a new dietitian. I was a bachelor living in my own apartment, and I tried eliminating all of the fun foods. So I didn't eat anything, chips, ice cream. It was all kind of eliminated in this name of being healthy. And then I threw one house party, and everyone left chips and cookies. And the very next day, I ate almost everything in one day. And I sort of realized that over-restricting can lead to this sort of rebound effect where you go crazy, you feel guilty about it because you're eating all these foods that you've kind of told yourself not to. And so I sort of take a similar approach now where I kind of think about it as, how do you make the healthy choice the default choice? So certainly I mostly keep nice, healthy foods around. But then when it comes to fun food, instead of buying a giant tub of ice cream and leaving it in my freezer, I tell myself, Friday, let's go to Dairy Queen or my local shop, enjoy it, and call it a day. So I do think there's an important balance. And I've seen the opposite effect of how over-restricting in my own kind of case as a dietitian can still lead to less healthy choices in the long run.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that, Terence. I think, and it's a good point. Over-restricting, being too restrictive can lead to that feeling of being guilty and then overeating. And to Olivia's point, really, dietitians aren't people who take all the fun out of eating and take everything off limits. So I think those are great points. I think that said, though, as we all know, there are foods that we tell our clients to limit or eat sparingly, like sugary beverages, which are the major source of sugar in the Canadian diet. And we know that routinely drinking sugary beverages can increase the risk of type 2 diabetes and heart disease. And we talk about processed red meats a lot too, in terms of really limiting their intake. And then ultra processed foods, which I'm reading about so much these days, those extensive industrial processed foods that have been associated with poor health, obesity, even early deaths. So when people ask me, are there foods I should never eat? I say no, but there are some categories of foods that you should limit if they need to.
But even within knowing those, it doesn't mean that, okay, now I never eat whatever that food is. But I just know that, hey, if I choose this other thing more often, it might be more supportive to whatever goal I'm looking for. So it's also in that information, like having that education about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like you can never have a tomato and bacon sandwich in the summertime.
No, that's cruel.
Yeah. But and I think what we all do a really good job of here is that we know it's your overall dietary pattern, your overall diet that matters most when it comes to protecting your health, not just one food.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. I get asked this routinely. I'm sure you do too. And I'm going to get you to weigh in first, Terence. But I often hear, is it okay to drink diet pop? Are artificial sweeteners safe? So what do you tell clients, Terence?
Yeah, well, I sort of take two approaches when I look at it. So if I'm with someone who's extremely highly motivated and they want to fine tune their diet to the biggest T and they're asking me about this question, then absolutely we have a conversation about it. But there are other clients who have all kinds of things that they need to work on. And maybe their diet pop is the one thing that they're doing that they feel good about. It's not necessarily the thing I'm going to eliminate. But as some of the research has sort of come along, there's certain implications on gut health that I think is extremely fascinating. But another area that I'm really interested in is how it affects sort of your sweet thresholds. So we know, for example, that people who tend to eat less sugar often tend to crave it less. If it's not a regular part of your diet, you're not looking for it at every single meal. And so when you do enjoy that dessert, it can be extremely satisfactory. What I'm a little bit worried about with some of my clients is if they're having that kind of hit of ultra sweet diet beverages, are they no longer satisfied with other sweet flavors? And are they no longer lowering that sugar threshold so that the ultimate amount of sugar that their body craves changes? So those are some of the questions I have, as well as some of the sort of emerging gut health research that has implications.
I really like the way you explained, that sugar threshold, because I think that's a huge misconception as well. This idea that sugars make you crave sugars. And it's not really like that. But of course, if I have a lot of sugar in my diet, that is what I'm going to lean more to. I think that's a very important distinction. I'm also very interested in the gut health angle of things as the dietitian who does focus a lot more on digestive health and gut health. And a lot of clients have questions about this sort of thing. And they're coming to me for this specifically, because when you look at it from that side, there are a few concerns that I have with artificial sweeteners. And actually very recently, there was a 2022 study, so just this past year, looking about how do these artificial sweeteners, or what we might call non-nutritive sweeteners, how do they affect the microbiome? And we now have actual proof that they do. And granted, this was a small study, like this is still emerging, but interesting nonetheless. A lot of my clients with IBS or IBD who have a lot of negative symptoms, such as like diarrhea and gas and bloating, if they are leaning to a lot of these, specifically your sugar alcohols, which have become so much more popular in the low carb keto realm, they're the ones that end in like OL. So if you've ever heard of like mannitol, xylitol, erythritol, those sorts of things, they actually can basically kind of sit in the gut and not be absorbed. But the detriment is things that are just sitting there can pull water, can be fermenting and leading to gas. And so that's where we see a lot of those types of side effects. So those are always on my to watch list.
Yeah, that's a good point. Looking at the type of non-nutritive sweeteners, as you say, like the sugar alcohols, and how they can impact someone's gut health, their IBS symptoms. I've written a couple of columns about diet pop as studies have come out, more recent studies over the years. And I do read that there are potential health risks of consuming, say, more than 2 servings a day of a diet pop. There was a 2019 study, for example, that tracked over 450,000 people aged 50 and over who were living in 10 different European countries, and they were followed for 16 years. And what the researchers found that I thought was interesting was that drinking 2 or more glasses, and a glass was only 8 ounces each, of soft drinks per day, whether they were artificially sweetened or sugar sweetened, was tied to a greater risk of early death from all causes. And when the researchers separated them out, people who drank the artificially sweeteners actually fared worse. And this wasn't the first study to suggest that a high daily intake, 2 or more servings of artificially sweetened beverages, could be harmful. And as you mentioned, Terence, I think we have evidence in animals and in humans that have shown that a high intake of artificial sweeteners can shift the composition of our gut microbes in a direction that could lead to obesity, glucose intolerance, diabetes, and ultimately cardiovascular disease. So it's certainly stuff to watch. And I also think it's fascinating that artificial sweeteners, they may also cause biological changes in our brain that influence satiety and weight gain. And like you said, they are intensely sweet. And when you're used to having something so intensely sweet, an apple just isn't going to cut it anymore. I think the bottom line is what you said. But for both of you, I would also say to that same person who asked me that question, the occasional diet soft drink isn't likely harmful.
Yeah, I think exactly to Terence's first point, that's a huge thing. If I have clients who are like, I know it's really bad that I'll have Diet Coke and I might have 2 cans on the weekend. That's totally fine. However, today I actually had a very interesting client. I haven't seen this in a long time. He was having up to 6 a day, and I believe it was Diet Coke. And I'm curious for both of you, when you're in that situation, what are your top tips for starting to bring that down or helping people kind of get away from that?
Yeah. So a couple of things I'd be wondering, because one, we know that Coke and many soft drinks have caffeine in it. So I'd be wondering how much of it is, just wanting that flavor versus, hey, I'm actually tired during the day and I'm looking for some extra caffeine. So maybe there's a sleep issue or an other underlying sort of problem. But I think the second thing I often do, and I've heard this a lot, some of my clients just say, I need a fizzy beverage with lunch or with dinner. It's just, my palate, my psychology has become accustomed to that. And so I actually start people by thinking about carbonated water with lemon or using certain products like a Perrier or La Croix, because if carbonation is really what they're after, you can get it in sort of a simpler way. So that might be a way to sort of start to pull it back. But also, again, I think figuring out, is there an energy issue where sleep might be an underlying cause or some other factor?
Great tips there.
That's a really great, often missing point about the fatigue side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on to another question I'm asked every day, probably. Which supplement should I be taking? Olivia, why don't you start first?
There definitely are a few that I'm recommending most often, and I'm hearing myself kind of say these things very often just based on what we know about diets in Canada and what people are often missing. Here, of course, at Medcan, we do have the advantage of being able to see certain blood markers, so I can confidently say, this would be a great one for you specifically. These most common ones, though, I would say are going to be for sure magnesium. And I think this has become more popular. I hear a lot more people taking this than I used to even like last year. Vitamin D is a classic one. Omega-3s is another one, whether they be fish-based or vegan algae-based is another very, very common one. A lot of people not really eating enough fish, or if they do, they might have a can of tuna here or there, which does not provide a ton. And multivitamins is actually another one that I get a lot of controversy, if you will, around. However, a multivitamin is a really great way to just fill in the gaps. And especially for a lot of clients now who are doing intermittent fasting, realistically, I think it's hard to meet all your needs in 2 meals and maybe a snack. So I think that's not a bad idea. But yeah, what are some of your common go-tos or questions around this that you often get?
I think one that I would spotlight with vitamin D, as an African Canadian, there's a couple of things I think about. So one, vitamin D we absolutely get from the sun, but we do know that having darker skin, while it protects you from things like sunburn and lower instances of skin cancer, its ability to absorb vitamin D from the sun, or transfer it from the sun, I should say, is a little bit lower. So I know many, many people in my family have been deficient, if not insufficient. And so it's something that I often recommend to many of my clients, especially if we have sort of blood work to support it. And then I think with the multivitamin, there's an interesting sort of theory, if you will. It's called sort of the inverse supplement hypothesis, where the people who are least likely to need a multivitamin are the people who are the most likely to take it.
That's very true.
Because they have very healthy diets, they're very health conscious, and they're trying to kind of dot all their I's and cross all their T's. And the people who put maybe the least stock in their nutrition and in their health and aren't that worried about, preventing certain conditions, they may be the people who would benefit the most because they're not eating their fruits and vegetables. So certainly if I see a client who kind of comes in, isn't that motivated about their nutrition specific health, I may recommend, hey, why not take this if you're not really interested in making certain dietary changes? Not that it would fix all the issues, but it sort of can act as a little bit of an insurance policy.
Yeah, I do routinely recommend some supplements, particularly multivitamins, but I think some other supplements have gotten bashed around in the media a little bit because of the most recent U.S. Preventative Task Force report in June. And it looked at all the research around taking multivitamins or calcium with vitamin D or vitamin E, beta carotene, for example, and the risk of chronic disease. And basically what these studies again find, all the research, is that taking a multivitamin and mineral supplement every day doesn't cut your risk of heart disease, doesn't cut your risk of cancer. But we know that, like you said, Olivia, often we recommend nutrient supplements to bridge gaps in people's diet. And really, to me, even with vitamin D, that's what it's for, because we can't consume as much vitamin D to maintain that sufficient level in our bloodstream. But what I recommend, sort of a broad-based, low-dose multivitamin and mineral supplement for adults over 50 to get the majority of their B12, for people who are eating a vegan diet for B12 and iodine, for people who are on a low-calorie diet trying to lose weight. Sometimes you can't get everything, particularly iron for women, on, say, a 1,400-calorie diet. And also for people I find who eat a very narrow range of foods, whether they're a picky eater or they just don't have much variety. So that's pretty routine for me. Vitamin D, we've talked about. Osteoporosis Canada recommends that adults take it year-round to maintain a sufficient blood level that's associated with bone health. And particularly so, as Terence mentioned, in the fall and winter when the sun just isn't strong enough to make vitamin D in our skin. With omega-3 fats, perhaps people can consider it if they don't eat fatty fish, whether they're getting it from a fish oil or an algae supplement. And I think many of the others really need to be individualized. Calcium, I tell my female clients, particularly postmenopausal women, to try to get as much as they can through foods first. And I think that is our philosophy overall, foods first. And then, if you need to bridge gaps, reach for a supplement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the point that's coming across to me anyhow is more of an individualized approach where if you are, say, vegan, we might take a closer look at B12 or iron or zinc. Or if you're someone on a calorie deficit, there might be a few that we look into. And that's sort of always been my philosophy of let's look at you as an individual rather than broadly say everybody should take this big list of supplements.
Exactly. And I think just to sort of conclude, Olivia, what you said is important too. More is not better. Taking high doses of certain supplements, for the minerals, for example, even vitamin D, those things store in your body and can be harmful. So I think that's a really good point as well. Okay, how about this one? This is an interesting question, but many people ask it. And I'd like to find out, Terence, since you're sort of in the sports nutrition world, how you handle this with your clients when they ask you, how many calories should I be eating each day?
So if you're one of my professional athletes, for example, who's training twice a day, 5 days a week, the caloric requirements are going to be much, much larger than, say, somebody who's sort of normal size, not doing a lot of exercise, sitting in an office for most of the day. And so I think when I get this question, the first thing I'm thinking about is, what is my client's goal? And if they're not necessarily trying to change their physique, let's say, then I encourage people to, rather than calculate their calories, figure out their appetite cues. Because generally, if you're filling yourself with nutrient-dense foods, you'll be meeting your caloric needs. And if you suddenly see yourself losing weight or gaining weight, you can make an adjustment based off that. But having said that, if you are someone, say one of my clients who wants to add muscle to their frame, there are sort of very specific calculations that we do. We can use body fat percentage, which can be calculated from tools like InBody, for example, can give us an idea of how much muscle you have, because muscle is a very metabolically active tissue, which increases how much calories your body uses. So I use some of those factors in my calculations. So there isn't just this one sort of blanket answer. It varies dramatically.
I love that idea. And I think that's such a common theme throughout all of our answers, is that we cannot provide any one blanket answer to anything, to anyone. And nor can we answer some of these questions just by looking at someone, right? Some people sit down in my office before I've done anything. They're asking me how many calories I need. However, I do think we risk leaning so much to those external cues or external factors of when to eat, how much to eat, that we really lose touch with our internal cues of what does hunger feel like to me? What does fullness feel like to me? You know, what levels of food often satisfy that?
Yeah. I see clients who are, so tuned into their MyFitnessPal app. All they're looking at is calories, grams of protein. Did I hit my targets? And they kind of lose the forest for the trees kind of thing. They're not thinking about bigger picture things on, how they're distributing their food throughout the day, how they feel after a meal. It depends who the person is, I suppose, really, what we're going to be sharing with them about calories. So let's move on to coffee. How often do you two get asked how much coffee is too much? Terence, you start.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think a lot of the early research pointed to sort of a modest increase in sort of cardiovascular disease in people who were over-consuming coffee. But when we looked at the nuances of the research, there was always groups of people that could drink plenty of coffee and have no negative effect on their cardiovascular system, and others where it would have a dramatic effect, particularly in increasing blood pressure. And so some people are what are called slow metabolizers of caffeine. It can sit in their system for hours and hours, and it causes, throughout the entire day, potentially an increase in blood pressure. People who are slower metabolizers, where it sits in for long term, the recommendation is actually 200 milligrams of caffeine, which is something like 2 small cups of coffee in a day. But for people who are fast metabolizers, people who kind of drink a coffee, it's in and out of their system, blood pressure doesn't go up for a very long period of time, some studies suggest upwards of 400 milligrams or more of coffee does not increase risk. So it is a little bit of a mixed bag when it comes to, an individual. I can't necessarily look at someone and tell them their genes and how much they should be drinking, but I do look at sort of certain health outcomes. So do they already have high blood pressure? Do they already have certain markers of cardiovascular disease? And based on all of their habits, is coffee one of the big ones that, if they're drinking 5-6 cups of coffee a day, is it something that we need to look at?
Yeah. How do you answer that for clients, Olivia?
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of a different approach. I'm a big coffee fan. Of course, that being said, that doesn't mean maybe that all people should drink coffee right before bed. But there's so many angles to look at this one with. Like, on the one hand, there's actually a lot of, benefit. There is antioxidants in coffee. There's research around coffee being supportive for liver health. And granted, that's likely also because the antioxidant concentration. There are some people, again, a lot of my clients with gut issues, IBS, looking for triggers. Coffee can be a big one. And it's often really hard, actually, for people to accept that because they might really like it. Especially I see with women going through menopause, because we do know the connection between coffee and caffeine and things like hot flashes and night sweats. Reducing it can actually be helpful, but can be actually often really hard to do. So it's not something that, I think is everyone must cut out coffee or anything, but certain people, and I guess based on whether they have that information, like Terence was saying, around their genome and whether or not they are a fast or slow metabolizer of caffeine. And there are, again, a few tests that can do that. Or if there's someone who's just experiencing those symptoms, and it comes down to, again, that level of being in tune with yourself. Are you noticing that some of your IBS symptoms are flaring up after your morning or afternoon coffee? Or are you noticing that you're getting more anxious? Or if you are struggling with anxiety, maybe right now we pull back the caffeine, but it's hard for me to recommend totally cutting that one.
So when people ask me that, I usually give them good news. There is plenty of evidence out there to suggest that drinking, say, 3 to 5 cups a day is good for your health, and sometimes more in terms of preventing certain chronic diseases. And I think most of the evidence we have, coffee's been consistently found to protect against type 2 diabetes, whether that's regular or decaffeinated coffee. And as your intake increases from 1 to 6 cups a day, the risk of diabetes decreases. So there's lots of mechanisms how coffee can protect your health. One thing though that I want to throw out here, because this is a big misconception that I continually hear, is that caffeinated coffee is not dehydrating. And many people think it is, even though caffeine is a very mild diuretic and causes your body to lose a little bit of water. I tell people that the amount of water in their coffee offsets that mild diuretic effect. But like you say, Olivia, I think it is important to point out, and that'll depend on our clients. There are potential downsides of coffee and caffeine, whether, it can make you anxious, irritable, it can boost your blood pressure, like you said, Terence. Too much caffeine can interfere with sleep. But like you both say, it is a very individualized answer. But coffee is a plant food.
I love all your good news, though.
Yeah.
And I'd be a hypocrite if I told people not to have any, because
yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
All right, we're on our last question now. And oh boy, this has been around for a long time. How many eggs can I eat a week? And I'll start off this one. I can't tell you how often I get this question. I mean, we all know the debate over eggs revolves around their high cholesterol content. There's 185 milligrams of cholesterol in one large egg yolk. And, consuming too much cholesterol has been thought to raise LDL, the bad cholesterol in our bloodstream, which we know is an established risk factor for heart attack and stroke. The consensus among scientists has always been that cholesterol in foods has little or no effect on blood cholesterol, and that's what we tell our clients. Many national dietary guidelines have removed that daily cholesterol limit we used to tell our clients, no more than 300 milligrams a day, based on studies finding no risk of cardiovascular disease with eating up to an egg a day. Since then, though, there has been back and forth in the research. There have been 2 large reviews of observational study, and I'll highlight that right there, that have suggested that very high intakes of eggs and dietary cholesterol could be harmful and increase the risk of not only getting cardiovascular disease, but dying from cardiovascular disease. So, I think what we're seeing now in the research is the higher risk only shows up with those higher intakes. If you eat a lot of egg yolks, let's say 2 or more per day, I do suggest cutting back a bit. And I do advise people who have elevated LDL cholesterol in their bloodstream, people who have existing coronary heart disease, and people who have diabetes. I do recommend that they limit to 4 whole eggs a week. There is evidence that people with diabetes are more efficient at absorbing cholesterol from food into their bloodstream. But on the other point, and maybe you can talk to this, Olivia, eggs are super nutritious, aren't they?
Super nutritious. Honestly, one of the most nutrient-packed, dense, quick sort of things you can do. So especially as we're talking, September and getting back to planning or in the school year or all that sort of thing. In conversations around meal prep, quick snacks, quick lunches, it comes up every time. So gotta say, big fan. But it's interesting now how you hear all of these negatives, or for so many years, kind of back and forth around eggs being bad, etc. And now at a different stage, so now I'm pregnant, and the messaging is eat more eggs because they're great for choline. So they actually recommend women eat like at least 1 a day. There are some dietitians who say like 2 or 3 a day because of the choline, which is huge for fetal development, but even for everyone, it is actually quite important
for the brain.
For brain development. Yeah. So that's just such another interesting angle that is so funny, that as you kind of go through life, suddenly all the recommendations change.
And it's an interesting point. Back when I was a student, I was lucky enough to do some egg-based research in kids. Full disclosure, funded by egg companies. But we were looking at whether or not eggs, and specifically choline, has a beneficial effect on certain cognitive processes. Our kind of hypothesis was the choline in the egg yolk specifically would have a little bit of a benefit. Well, what we found was, the whole egg was actually more beneficial than the sum of its parts when it came to a lot of these processes. So I think there's really a diverse range of nutrients that we do need in a nice breakfast, especially if you're a kid who's involved in doing learning and growing. And so, again, a blanket approach where we tell people, only have 2 eggs for an individual who has no concerns for sort of cardiovascular disease or high LDL or diabetes, I think ends up being the wrong message. I think that person-to-person approach where if someone is at risk, hey, let's look at some other options. Let's look at our beans and lentils and things that lower LDL. But for a child or someone who's pregnant or someone who's shown no adverse kind of consequences at all, I'm not the one to tell them to pull it out of their diet.
Yeah. When we stay on top of the research too, to look and see what's happening. And the other point, as I mentioned earlier, those 2 large reviews of multiple large studies, they were observational, so they don't prove cause and effect. Still, there's the suggestion, there's an association, and we have to watch it. And I think to your points about the nutrients, brain-friendly choline, good source of selenium, the whole egg. And what many people don't realize is 40% of the protein in an egg is actually in the yolk. Mm-hmm. And that's why we dietitians tell our clients that if they are replacing a whole egg for its protein content, it takes 2 egg whites to do that. So,
right.
And I think, the bottom line here is preventing cardiovascular disease, keeping your heart healthy, managing your blood cholesterol, as you just said, Terence, is about a whole lot more than just watching your egg or cholesterol intake. Plant foods, fiber, etc., exercise, all of those things are really important too.
Yeah, I think we have to miss all the things that we can add. Like back to that first question, we get so focused on, okay, what do I take away to reduce my cholesterol or whatever it may be? But often the answer actually lies in, hey, why don't we include some more of these types of foods into your diet that might help, balance things out and have a benefit from the additive side of things, which I think people are happy to hear.
The positive messages.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you both so much. Our conversation, I'm sure, has given our listeners lots of insight and lots of tips to help them eat a healthy diet without being afraid to eat certain foods. Olivia, what's your favorite tip today that we talked about?
Ooh, putting me on the spot. Okay. I think the most important tip, honestly, is that there is not one answer for every person. And that kind of speaks to the importance of digging into your diet a little bit more and into your history and all of those sorts of things with a dietitian to be able to say like, hey, this would be a worthwhile strategy for me personally. It's just a great kind of opportunity to learn a little bit more about yourself too. So yeah.
Great. What about you, Terence? What was your favorite tip today?
Yeah, I think one of the big things I got out of it was sort of our conversation around diet beverages and sugar sweetened beverages. I think the idea around some of those sugar alcohols when it comes to IBS and managing those symptoms are huge, and is definitely something I'm going to look out for with clients who are suffering from those issues.
Great. Yeah. And I think my favorite takeaway tip for our listeners is that, instead of focusing on what you shouldn't eat, what you can't eat, what you need to take away, instead focus on what you can eat and add those healthy foods to your diet. Because if you do that, you're going to squeeze out some of the things that you might want to eat less of for whatever reason. So focus on what you should be eating more of. That's what I think. Well, again, thank you both so much for joining me today. It's been fun. It's been really fun. I hope you've both had a good time.
Yeah, thanks so much for it's definitely fun to talk about these sorts of things and kind of also have a little bit of a platform for it.
Absolutely. And I think it's always good to, hear from colleagues as well. So I'm not always stuck in my own bubble, but get to hear, other professionals' thoughts. So thanks so much for having me on.
Our pleasure. And to everybody, until next time, stay well.
That was Medcan's Director of Food and Nutrition and Chair of the Dietitians of Canada, Leslie Beck, in conversation with Medcan dietitians Olivia Cupido and Terence Boateng.
If you'd like to arrange a consultation with a Medcan registered dietitian like Leslie, Olivia, or Terence, email nutrition@medcan.com.
We'll post episode highlights and links you can visit on our website at eatmovethinkpodcast.com.
Say hello and send us a tip or a suggestion by emailing us at info@eatmovethinkpodcast.com.
Eat Move Think is produced by Ghost Bureau. Jasmine Ratch is managing producer. Social media and strategy support is from Chantal Gertan, Andrew Imex, and Emily Bozick. Executive producer is me, Christopher Shulgin.
We'll be back soon with a new episode examining the latest in health and wellness.
This podcast is intended to provide general information about health and wellness only and is not designed or intended to constitute or be used as a substitute for medical advice, treatment, or diagnosis. You should always talk to your Medcan healthcare provider for individual medical advice, diagnosis, and treatment, including your specific health and wellness needs. This podcast is based on the information available at the time of preparation and is only accurate and current as of that date. Source information and recommendations are subject to change based on scientific evidence as it evolves over time. Medcan is not responsible for future changes or updates to the information and recommendations and assumes no obligation to update based on future developments. Reference to or mention of specific treatments or therapies does not constitute or imply a recommendation or endorsement. The links provided within the associated document are to assist the reader with the specific information highlighted. Any third-party links are not endorsed by Medcan.